I've always had people around me with, you know, my family that keep it practical. You know what I mean? They're just like, hey, it's not, don't stress about that. It doesn't have to be perfect. You know what I mean? Just be practical. Make it something you can actually attain, you know? And so I'm all for setting high goals. I have high goals. You have big dreams, you know? But you can't just go from A to there. You know what I'm saying? You A to B to C, you know, it's a step by step.
So we are here with the Rob Mathis podcast with the Jonas Thatcher. Thanks for coming in, man.
Appreciate you having me.
Tell me a little bit about your business. He's a barber here in Knoxville, a shop owner. Tell us about what everything Barbers United is all about.
Yes, sir, man. Barbers United Barbershop, located in Bearden off of Kingston Pike. And it is me and two other guys right now. Started August of 2021. I'm used to saying last year, but I can't say that anymore because that's 2022 now. So August of 2021, we opened up. It was just me by myself. And now I've got two other guys working for us there. So growing little by little, man.
That's awesome. I mean, that's stout. You're getting two people in a span of, a year and a half?
Yeah.
What has that been like to see the growth?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been tough because, you know, you have big dreams and big goals, but you also have to try to be smart with how you grow, right? You don't want to just bring in a bunch of people right off the bat, you know, as far as my long-term vision goes. It is not the typical, you know, small town barbershop that most people are used to where we offer like booth rent to the barbers and stuff like that. I've got a little bit of a more creative path that I'm taking with that. And because of that, it was not like I just wanted to fill the chairs and just rent them out to as many people as possible and just get as much money off of booth rent as possible. I really wanted my guys to have time to grow and to build their clientele before bringing other people in. So that's why I waited about 6 or 7 months before my first guy came in and then gave him about 3 or 4 different months. And then brought the next guy in. So it's kind of been slow. It's fun. It was easy going from 1 to 2. 2 to 3 I felt like was a bigger jump. You know, I felt like me by myself, I was able to build up enough clientele where I could fill a second chair. But I felt like, and part of the reason why you and me are in touch now is I felt like that jump from 2 to 3, 3 to 4 was going to take more than just me and my personal barbering skills, that we were going to have to take a bigger leap. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for the new year and what all that's going to look like.
That's awesome. That's and I think too, we had discussed when we had lunch the other day about now you're getting to the area where it's like, okay, well, we could start building a culture here. Like once you get over 3 people, and that's something we've experienced here, is like once you hit that kind of group status, right? It's not just 2 people or not just one person. You can kind of establish a culture. Yeah. Which is really cool. So where did your journey start? Like with everything, dude, barbering?
My journey started before I even realized it was starting. I think I told you my dad was a barber. So I think he started when I was probably about 5 or 6. He was doing like some heavy duty construction, working for the union, and then you know, just kind of got tired of it. And in Indiana, the way it works is during the wintertime, they can't work. You know, we get snow, it gets to freezing temperature, so he would always get laid off every winter. So that's kind of the time where he started to really take it serious. And then one of the years, he was like, you know what, during this time I'm laid off, I'm going to go to barber school. And then he went to barber school, got his license, eventually left the union and started up his own shop. So ever since I was 6 or 7, me and my brother's sister, we would spend weekends or days after school at the barbershop for long periods of time, you know. And so just sat there watching, having a good time. And I think that's really where I fell in love with the environment more than ever actually cutting hair. You know, some people really do get nerded out about actually cutting hair and the, you know, the specifics of it and the fades and stuff like that. And I like that, I do. But for me, it was always the environment and the people and just seeing the impact that he was able to have and that the barbershop was able to have on the community and being around a bunch of guys, cutting up, talking sports, and talking about everything. That's the cool thing, you know. I think that's what makes it so unique and so fun as a barber coming to the barbershop is like every day you don't know what you're going to get. You know, one day this guy might want to talk, hopefully not, but politics. Someone might want to talk religion. Someone might want to talk sports. Someone might want to talk about their family, their kids, every different thing. You know, you can wear a million different hats in one day, but you're still a barber at the end of the day, you know? And so being able to see the different emotions, the different people that the barbershop environment brings, I think that's what I fell in love with the most, you know? And so I never thought, hey, I'm going to be a barber. I'm full-time. I'm going to open up my own barbershop. But as time went on, I found that a lot of other things I pursued really didn't fulfill me in that way. I just never felt like I was fulfilling a purpose. You know, I made good money, I was happy, I was able to get married, those kind of things, but never really felt satisfied. And I just knew that if I continued to work a 9-to-5 job my whole life, I just wasn't going to be fulfilling. You know, I wanted to leave that same impact that I had saw, you know, growing up my whole life. So went through high school, did it on the side for a really long time. And then, a year and a half, 2 years ago, right around COVID, I left my job, decided I was going to go full time, and went to school, and then opened up right after school. So
that's sweet. That's awesome. It's really cool too. You talked about the man, like a place where guys can hang out, right?
Yeah, definitely.
The barbershop is kind of one of those last bastions of men just being able to hang out kind of recreationally.
Yeah.
Number one, how cool is it that you get to be a part of that and facilitate that? But number two, how important is just the resurgence of the barbershop as well as a concept, right? We had talked before, it was like there for a while, late 90s, early 2000s, it seemed like a disappearing. I mean, I remember growing up, I got my hair done at a salon or whatever, you know, everybody's getting frosted tips and perms, right?
Definitely.
So how important is that shift, and then how fun is that to be a part of it?
I think it's a big responsibility, man. It's a blast, it's an honor, but you know, you're a dad as well, you know, and I think that dads, men, they're so important to our culture. You know, we see the evidence of that when they're not there, you know, and so I think that the barbershop is a great place to build those pillars, you know, with men. And so that's the exciting part. That's my goal, is to create a place where guys just want to come and even hang out. You know, my goal is that guys are showing up 2 hours before their appointment just because, like, that's the place to be, you know. And so when I envision my shop that I, you know, hopefully, Lord willing, could have in a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, that's the place it is for guys to be there. And yeah, you know, I hear, obviously, like I said, I kind of grew up during that resurgence. My dad was kind of part of that, but yeah, you read the books, we learn about it in school of how, like, it almost disappeared. It was pretty much just salons, you know, and so that's kind of the responsibility, though. I want to help take that small town barbershop feel that is for men, that's different. You know, you can tell, anyone can tell it's different than when you walk into a Great Clips, a Sports Clips, you know, all those big brand ones, but try to grow it to that level. And, you know, you don't see that too often. You see a lot of small town, you know, local shops that people know, hey, that's where you get the best haircut. Hey, that's where the best environment is, but maybe they only have one location, 2 locations, you know. Why is that? So that's the gap that we're trying to build or bridge. And hopefully we can do it, man. And I'm excited to be a part of the journey.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I do want to kind of touch on that as, like, kind of on a more personal side. Both of us being the same age, right?
Yep.
And being fathers, being young business owners. How important is it that we surround ourselves with other men, and how important is that? I mean, iron sharpens iron, obviously.
Dude, number one.
You know?
That's why that's the slogan for the shop there. Iron sharpens iron. One, because it fits the whole, you know, straight razors and the logo and sharpening and all that stuff. But that's the number one thing, man. And that's the point of the barbershop in my eyes. And we've touched on it already here. But just to make each other better, push each other to be the best version of ourselves, you know, and that's what obviously the goals for the shop's first priority is, to make sure you look your best. But if we can help somebody feel better about themselves, then that's the next goal. You know what I mean? We hope that always in the shop that the conversations that are had in there are productive, you know, that if, you know, let's say today I am being a sports analyst or a comedian, but then also you have the therapist, you know what I mean? Someone may come in there and have kids and want to talk about their kids, or someone may be struggling with their marriage and they want marriage advice, you know, or someone may not do very well financially and they want some financial advice. And so just the goal is to have an environment where people come in and they leave feeling better than they came in. And I think that's the number one thing that I love about it, is the people I get to meet. You know, I met you through Corey King, who's been a great friend, and he comes in every time he comes in the shop and he's like, hey, when you add another chair, hey, when are you doing this, you know? And surrounding yourself with those people that can push you is huge. You know what I mean? If you have those people around you, it's only going to make you better. And so that's why we go with iron sharpeneth iron. And I think that's my favorite part about the shop.
That's so cool. Yeah. And we had talked about before, you know, and the same with media on my end, you know, they're both kind of creative fields, right? But ultimately, it's a way, you know, whether it's barbering for you or media and marketing on my end, like, ultimately we're here to serve people and impact people's lives. But then also, like, we get to interact with some really cool folks. And it's really, really, really neat. And I know because you're doing a project, right, where you're cutting people's hair while you're kind of discussing stuff like that, right?
Yeah, it's exactly what you're saying, man. I just come to the realization that it's selfish for you, for me, to get to meet these people, to hear these stories, and then not share them. You know what I mean? We build these connections. I have so many people come in the shop that are, maybe in the same stage of life as me. Maybe they're 10, 15, 20 years older, and they've already built their business from the ground up, and they have advice that they can give me and share with me. And it's like, man, I'm being selfish if I don't share this with the rest of the people. You get to hear the celebrities and the A-list people go on all these big podcasts, and that's great. I think you can learn from those people as well. But for the majority of people, those goals or those heights are unattainable for a lot of different reasons. But, they could, potentially go open up their own shop, or they could potentially go open up their own business, and maybe it never reaches those heights, but it's able to provide for their family, and they're able to do something they love or make an impact on the community in some way. And if we can help them do that, then that, to me, that's the goal. You know what I'm saying? So I am considering and working on a project. It's tough because like I told you, as far as marketing for the shop goes, to me, it's easy to cut a little 30-second video, 60-second video, make it for the shop, and promote it that way. But the longer form media, to me, is something I've never done. And I think it's cool, and I like to talk. I talk to people all day long. But there's a different element to it, and you can attest to that, going back and listening to yourself and going back and editing and stuff. It's not as easy as it sounds, And so I've toyed with it for a little bit here and played around with it, and hopefully with some help from you, we can make it happen.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited for that project. I think it's going to be awesome. Even just looking at the roster that you've kind of laid out, number one, that you've already interviewed that we talked about before, but then also just the vision of it, I think is super cool. And I think it can be very inspiring, like you said, to guys who are, who just need a barbershop conversation without maybe they don't need a haircut yet, right?
Yeah,
so which is even a lot very cool as well.
Yeah.
I do kind of want to talk about, okay, so as young entrepreneurs, right? We have a certain vision, right? And you've already referenced your vision for your business and stuff like that. Is that something you had to train in yourself, or have you always had sort of like, all right, I'm built for bigger things? Or is it something, maybe an event you're like, when I was a kid?
Dude, I would say, I don't know that there was one time in my life. I realized very quickly through school that I have a hard time keeping my attention, with the teacher just sitting there teaching. And so I realized very quickly, and taking that office job as well, that just wasn't the life for me. You know what I mean? And so I always wanted more, and I always wanted bigger, but it was more about just having the freedom. I like to do a lot of different things. I don't like to I have a hard time focusing on one solid thing and just seeing that through. My mind is always wandering, different ideas, different things. So as far as the vision for entrepreneurship and wanting to start my own business and build something, I think that was always definitely ingrained upon me. But as far as the vision goes for what I want the shop to be, that's just taking time, man, and that was kind of the thing that I saw a lot of people when I was graduating school. They're like, oh, you need to go work at another shop, or you need to go build your clientele or stack some money, or, kind of just fine tune some things. Because before, it was, for me coming out of school, it's like, no, I'm just going to go open my own shop. And it's like, then everyone has 100 million questions for you. And you're like, I don't know all those answers. I'm going to be honest, I don't. And so they're like, oh, well, you need to fine tune those. You need to have your business plan, and you need to have all these different things. Exactly what's going to be your, all your different, I don't even know, but just,
I know exactly
what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They just have a lot of, and they're good, like they're trying to help you, but it's just like, I don't know. I just know that this is what I want to do. And so my vision has kind of been something that has been fun over the last year and a half or so as I'm building the shop and kind of bringing in people. We're learning together, and I'm kind of crafting slowly that vision of what the future is going to look like. What's the shop going to look like? What's the brand going to look like? Slowly but surely, And so that's been the nice part about not jumping. I jumped all the way in, but then I didn't just try to pull it all together overnight. I didn't try to bring in 10 different barbers. I didn't throw a ton of money into marketing. I didn't try to sink it, before it even started swimming. So it's just been, hey, I know this is going to take time. I've already got through the hard part, and I told you a little bit about my story, leaving my job and all that, but I've already got through the hard part. We're going to take this nice and slow, and it's going to happen, and we're going to build a nice foundation for it. So the vision for the shop, it's come slowly over the last year and a half, and it's got a long way to go, but I think just the entrepreneurship, I think I was always going to be in me. My stepdad owns the barbershops. My dad, he owns his own businesses. I remember being in like middle school, and this was one of the coolest things to me, but we opened up a like snack shack out of my grandma's house. So when there was a period of time where we sold our house growing up, and we went to live with my grandma, and at the time she lived in a trailer park, and it was this trailer, and there was a ton of kids, so we would always go play. Well, my grandma, she always made these like different kind of like snacks and different things like ices and stuff like that. And so I remember what we did was we're like, we could probably start selling these and make like for like a quarter. You know what I mean? It was literally just like Kool-Aid. It was like a fruit cup is what we called it. I don't know if you never heard of it, but it was basically just Kool-Aid frozen into ice, and then it's like a slushy kind of. And so we're like, we'll just make a few of them, and then we'll go outside with them, and then the kids will start asking. So that's what we did. Me and my brothers, we started taking these little fruit cups outside, and the kids were like, oh, I want one of those. I want 25 cents, 25 cents. Dude, by the time we moved out, like 6 months later, like she was selling everything from like chips to slushies to root beer floats to hot dogs to walking tacos, like everything. Like she was probably making decent money too. And so I think that spirit was just always ingrained in our family and in who we were. So just kind of following that.
Dude, I think that's awesome. I love hearing stories like that because so I'm finding, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well. There's people who have the vision and the people that just, I don't want to say they don't, but maybe they haven't opened their eyes to see the vision. Like I'm studying meditations right now, the Marcus Aurelius, like, the whole thing, like a guide to life almost, Yeah. And he says in one of them, it's like, everybody has, don't blame them because they can see things, they can feel things with their body, right? But we essentially possess a special kind of vision, right? So there's like the vision of like, well, what can my life be?
Yeah.
Or we can sell these things. We can build whatever we want to build, right? And I think, and so I always enjoy asking that question, and hearing stories like that is awesome because, I think you can open your eyes and learn to have vision, but then also I think for some people it's just always ingrained.
Yeah.
I think
it's cool. Practicality too, man. I think that's the biggest thing for people is they vision these things, but then they don't have a practical step to get there. You know what I mean? And it's like they want these big dreams. They want to hit these big goals that they hear people hitting, but then it's like, yeah, but how are you going to get there, man? Like, and that's the problem is they don't see the bridge to get there, and so they can never get started because they don't. It's simple when in all reality, but you have to be practical about it. You know what I mean? It was like when I'm opening the shop, it's like, okay, well, how are you going to, so many people, oh, did you get a business loan? Do you have an investor? Like, how are you, is it $20,000-$30,000? And it was like, no, if it was $20,000-$30,000, I wouldn't be opening the shop. Like, there's no way. Like, no, I used chairs. I drove to Menards in Kentucky to find these little boards that I could put up on the stations. My dad come help me build these stations. Like, no, like I have a friend who's an electrician. He hooked up the lights, and my buddies, now I give them a discount on they've got discounts on haircuts for life because they came and helped me lay the floors for free. Like, no, there was some things that we had to, not to say cut corners, but we had to go cheaper on because it had to be practical. I couldn't build my perfect shop right off the bat, and so I think that's the thing too, is like I've always had people around me with, my family that keep it practical. You know what I mean? They're just like, hey, it's not, don't stress about that. It doesn't have to be perfect. You know what I mean? Just be practical. Make it something you can actually attain, and so I'm all for setting high goals. I have high goals. You have big dreams, but you can't just go from A to there. You know what I'm saying? You A to B to B to C. It's a step by step. And so I think that's the big thing. It's just make it practical. Just what's your next step? You know what I mean? Because you can't go from there to there. Like when I quit my job and I want to open up a barbershop, I couldn't just do that overnight because I didn't have a barber license. You know what I mean? I had to take a step back and quit my job, go to barber school, deliver pizzas on the side to get to the point where I could get my barber license, to get to the point where I could open up the barber shop. You know what I mean? So sometimes you have to take a step back, and it's not always going to be fun and easy, but just make it practical. Make it simple. Just get started, because once you get started, then, You won't stop.
Dude, I've so many awesome points made in that because, like, okay, so number one, starting from the last thing you said is like, just get started and you won't stop.
Yeah.
Everybody in this room knows, like, during each podcast that I have with an entrepreneur, like, it comes up at least one time where I say, when you're trying to decide if it's time to get started or you're afraid, or like a lot of things we do as entrepreneurs, like they're like, oh, wow, you must have really just ground it out. And like, wow, that takes guts to get up every morning and do whatever. And it's like, honestly, dude, I have no other choice.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
exactly,
So really the goal has got to be just get to where you can actually go all in and into which, and you can leverage that, not necessarily having I'm not saying be reckless, right? But not having anything to fall back on and going and be like, I'm doing this.
Yep.
I mean, it's a lot easier to go forward when you cannot go back.
100%.
And you definitely cannot sit still. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
And so I think that's a huge point. And then also, dude, the practicality part, I mean, that's anytime anybody comes to me and asks for any kind of advice or whatever, that's always like, and I can tell if somebody's like, if it's going to work out or not I just ask them, like, okay, where's the money come in? You know, practicality, like for you, it's like, getting folks in and, people are going to pay for their haircuts. But especially whenever people are like, I got this brand new idea, I got da-da-da-da. It's like, well, where are you going to get money?
Yeah.
Right? And unless you're working with a big investor or not even a big investor, unless you can get a loan or something like that into which you have cash to sustain the business in the short term until you can make a profit. Like if you're going to bootstrap this mug, where does the money come in?
Yep.
And if you're starting with no upfront capital, and then so it's just being practical, dude. I love that you're like, yeah, we drove to Kentucky to get used chairs. I did that, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like I remember coming down and going to some of the most nefarious corners and depths of Knoxville, going to this weird warehouse that we had just found on Facebook Marketplace for office chairs, and I'm like, dude, I came in here with intentions of getting an office chair. I'm lucky if I leave with my wallet, right? It's like I'm lucky if I leave but we got the chairs and we got like this, used office furniture and stuff like that. But now that when you can start to upgrade things and it makes you that much more appreciative,
100%.
And I think it's all part of the journey.
It is.
And I think, just being able to enjoy the journey. Do you find that hard? I find that hard sometimes. It's like we're on this journey and we're marching forward, going step by step. But I forget sometimes to appreciate where I'm at, being so goal focused.
Yeah.
Do you find that hard?
You got the peaks and valleys. There are days where you're like, you're on cloud nine, you're walking out of your shop, and you're like, man, we did some good things today. Like we're on a good path. And there's some days where you're in the dog days, and it's hard to look up and really feel like, is this really what we're doing? Like, are we really making progress? Like, this is brutal, So yeah, I think that's a part of it, but it makes it, like you said, I think that when you get through the portion of your life where that getting started phase, everything else is just like, you know what, I can get through this. You know what I mean? Like you talk about not being able to go back, like during those days when I was going to school full time, delivering pizzas at night, and it would be like 11 o'clock at night on a Friday night, and I'm delivering pizzas and I know I'm not leaving until 12:30, and I know I'm taking this pizza 25 minutes out to not get a tip, or I know they're going to give me a $2 tip, and it's just miserable, and I want to go home, and I know I have to wake up the next morning and go to barber school from 8 to 2, and I'm not going to make a dime because you can't make money while you're in barber school doing haircuts, and then I'm going to turn around and be back here from 4 to midnight the next night. Like, there's no joy in that. There's nothing fun about that, but you're just like, I got to get through this. I got to get through it. So having those times to look back on when you're like, I got through that, we're going to be okay here. Like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
like, we're going to be good.
It's like, dude, at least I get to be in my own shop.
Yes, at least, yep, exactly.
At least I'm
getting paid for this.
Exactly.
At least I'm getting paid for this.
Dude, yes, that is the key. And then too, I think like being conscious of, even in those hard times, even back then, I remember being conscious, or like, I always tell myself, and I've always, maybe it's a character, maybe it sounds conceited or whatever, but I'm my main character in my movie or my book or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, if I hit something, a struggle or whatever, it's like, okay, this is just going to be a really good setup for that, for breaking the glass in the next level, and it's like, oh, I had this happen, I had this happen, but then it all, then everything, took it to the next level.
Yeah.
And I think, having kind of stacking those successes, but also, realizing that you do have it within you to be resilient, I think is huge. And I think, like you said, when you look back on those moments and you're able to push through, it allows you to trust yourself.
100%.
And your mind is kind of like, all right, yeah, this does suck. But
Yeah.
number one, I'm very blessed to be where I'm at.
Yeah.
Number two, like, no matter what comes, it won't be hopefully as bad as that.
I think it all stems back to self-confidence as well. Those times when, you take a loss on that day or something doesn't go your way, you start to really doubt yourself. It's just like, am I meant to do this? You know what I mean? Or am I good enough to reach those heights? Like, am I crazy? You know what I mean? Like, you start to have those little fears and doubts. And if you have those, like, you can't achieve anything if you don't have, the thing I always say is, like, if you don't believe in yourself, no one will, you know what I mean? And you've heard that a million times, but I always tell myself that, like, all right, I got to believe in myself, because how am I going to sell myself to a client? How am I going to sell myself to another barber if I don't believe in myself alone, So I think it all stems back to self-confidence and just having that faith in, like, you know what, I can do this, and this is who I am, and this is what I'm meant to do, and these goals are what I am going to achieve, and I can do this, and I'm just as good as the other guy that did it, you know what I mean? I'm better. So I think it's just those talks with yourself of, like, don't let those self-doubt creep in, you know what I mean? Because we've had it, I think mine mostly comes not as much from interactions with clients, because those very rarely seem to go wrong. Like, most of those go really well. I think it's when I'm when I'm talking to other people about my goals, my dreams, maybe I'm trying to sell another barber to come to the shop, you know what I mean? Or I sit down with you and we talk about it. I have another business friend that, starts talking about the business, and I bring it up, and then, things go south, or like a barber doesn't accept the job. I've had that happen multiple times where I find this barber, I'm like, oh, he's going to be perfect. Like, we can do really good things. And then I pitch him, I give him the best offer possible, and then doesn't take it. He's like, no, I'm good. And then it's like, man, dude, like, what wasn't good enough? What was that? Yes. And then I'm like, man, am I crazy? Like, is this just not, do I need to restart and just do this the same way everyone else is doing? Like, am I completely wrong? And it's like, you know what? No, I'm good. This is going to work. Like, you put the time in, Jonas, you put the effort in, you've sat there in front of the spreadsheets, you've done the numbers, that this is the way to go, this is the way it's going to work. Believe it. You can't let someone else's opinion of you or, the outcome of an event change the way that you see yourself.
No, I love that. That is 100% true. And then, by putting in that extra work that nobody sees, you build up trust within yourself, and then you actually can feel confident in saying, all right, no, I know what I've done.
Yeah.
I've done what I need to do.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go get it. And all that's happening is just the build up, to the conflict, to that awesome pivotal scene whenever 100%. I do break that, whenever I do break that ceiling.
Yeah.
And then too, I do want to talk about, as well as, like, we both have this in common, is like being a young father, right? We're married.
Yep.
With children. You have a daughter, right? And I have a son and a daughter, and they're both around the same, or they're all three around the same age.
Yeah.
I have a 2.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and they're all toddling, and it's like, these are very interesting times for us,
100%.
like, as men and as fathers. What do you kind of feel is, like, challenging with that? Do you feel like there's challenges, or?
Yeah, 100%. I just envision every time, it's like I know specifically the biggest challenge for me when I first started this whole journey was right when my wife got pregnant. I had decided to go to barber school in, like, April, May-ish of that year, 2020, and my wife got pregnant in August. And, as excited as I was to be a dad, I was overwhelmed and I was nervous, because it was a tough time in my life where it was like, I just quit my job. I just started barber school. I've got this part-time job delivering pizzas. Like, that's not going to feed a family forever. You know what I mean? And so it was just like those early days of her being born and me still having, because I had probably a month left of school by the time she was born. And so she's born. I'm still doing school. I'm still working the nighttime job. And it was like, dude, I was gone all day. I had a 30-minute gap from when I got out of school to when I would go into work, and I wasn't there. You know what I mean? And I felt like, man, I'm not able to help her, but, like, I'm pursuing this goal that's going to be for her benefit, that's going to be for my family's benefit, and I'm going to have the freedom one day that most people don't get of being able to go to all her ball games, being able to go to all her events, whatever sports she decides to play, if she plays sports, if she plays an instrument, if she sings, whatever it is she decides to do, I'm going to be able to be there every step of the way. I'm going to have control. And so that's what you have to tell yourself. But at the beginning, it was like, I'm missing crucial parts, you know what I'm saying? I'm doing my best, but I only see her for an hour a day, you know what I mean? And when I come home at 11 o'clock at night, she's asleep. And when I leave in the morning, she's still sleeping, And so the only time I saw her is if she woke up in the middle of the night. And then, I'm not very happy to see her at that point. But, like, you can't be upset, And so it was like, and then, opening the shop, same thing. The first 6 months I opened the shop, I had the same schedule. I would go to the shop in the morning, come back home for a little bit, go deliver pizzas at night. And I had to do that. And so it was like that first almost year of her life of going through school and opening a shop and working and not being there. That's tough. You sacrifice that. I know you right here beforehand, you snuck out to get a coffee with your son because that's what you have to do sometimes. You have to just make time in your busy schedule to be able to be a part of their lives, because right now time is limited. But we're doing that so that in the future, 10 years from now, we have all the time in the world, and we'll be able to be a part of everything that they do. So
it is, and it's really nice. I mean, I know you and I are neither where we want to be ultimately, right? But we are getting to the point where we can at least see glimpses of what that life can look like.
Yep.
And isn't it the freaking best to be like,
100%.
All right, we're on the path, right?
Yep, 100%.
And that I think, to me, I'm getting like chill bumps, because it's like, you do all these things to, for me, I'm driven very much by legacy, right? So where did, my grandkids or my, even my kids are like, this is where our family tree changed, right? This is where things became different for our family and our family name. And so for me, like thinking of, those times, those extra hours that you put in, or, going and digging in and not literal dirt, but just having to dig within yourself and be like, all right, these are the times that make or break you. I mean, you got to find that. And I think having kids can be a great motivator, but you got to be ready because it is hard.
It's the ultimate motivator, man.
Yeah.
And you talk about legacy, and that's a big thing for me, and tune into hopefully what will be my podcast here soon. And two of my first guests are going to both be my dad and my stepdad, because they both changed their family trees forever, and it changed with them. And my dad he grew up, and really he was the youngest of three boys, and so it was a lot more of what he was born into from his cousins, his older brothers. But just looking up to them, he got into a lot of trouble growing up, in and out of juvenile detention, in and out of prison for a long time, until probably we were the age of 6, 7, 8. And then things changed for him, and he turned it around. And the same thing for my mom and my stepdad was like, the tradition was, if you graduate high school, that's awesome. We're celebrating that, because most people don't. My mom had me and my brother while she was still in high school, and so it was like that was the pattern of life, the cycle of life that they were in. You know what I mean? It was nothing long term. And my mom really is the one who I give a lot of praise to, because she grinded, man. She had 2 kids in high school. She still graduated. She went to college. She got her nursing degree. I mean, there was a time where she was in school, working as a nurse, and raising us, you know what I mean? But to try to change that. And so I got to grow up and watch my dad turn his life around, my stepdad turn his life around, my mom turn her life around. And I feel obligated now, especially being the oldest of all my siblings, but I think I can speak for them in saying that they're obligated as well. That's like, we can't turn around and go back now, man. You know what I mean? They actually changed when it was hard. You know what I mean? They changed the entire generation that they grew up with, and all their family members were doing this, and they changed. So now it's like, I can't go back, you know what I mean? And so there's that pressure and that responsibility, like, you know what, they changed the course. Now I got to keep this flame going for the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. And so that's the most fun part, and like you said, the ultimate motivator, but it's also the biggest responsibility as well.
Yeah. Dude, I love that, because, for me, it's refreshing. I mean, because we're having these conversations, and these are thoughts that I have a lot, and then to hear you say that as from like one generation down from like when the family tree kind of really hit that next level, it's really cool to see like people that take that seriously, right? And it's not something that they take for granted, and it's really cool to see you not taking it for granted too. Also, I do want to talk about, we could not dig down and dig deep and do these things for our family that we could, or that we do, without our freaking awesome wives, right? We talked about this at lunch.
Incredible, man.
And we both, we both have the unique situation of like we married young, which a lot of people don't do nowadays. But we were talking and it was like, really marrying young has allowed us to not worry about the whole finding a spouse while we're doing these things. Like we have it locked down. We have somebody who's there to support us. We have somebody who's there to encourage us. We have somebody there to call us on our BS when we need it. And also, help raise these children that holding the fort down while we are putting in those extra hours. Is it not just the best to have somebody like that in your corner?
And everyone has their different beliefs, but I just think that's the way we were created to be. You know what I mean? It's the exact purpose of the husband and wife, you know what I mean? The way that God designed it. And I think it's so crucial, man. I couldn't be here without her, you know what I mean? And I've done one other podcast around this time last year, and I got through the whole podcast, and the other guys were kind of singing my praises, like, oh, this has been great, like you're awesome, all these things. And I had to stop right before. I was like, okay, before we finish this, let me just give a shout out to my wife, because I know, it's easy to hear it from me, but like, she's the reason that this is all here. Let's be honest. You know what I mean? And so like for me, when I left my job, you know what I mean? How many people get the opportunity to walk away from their job that pays really well, and then their wife being able to step up and produce for the family? And I, as a man, you don't like that, because you're like, no, I'm the producer. I'm going to be the one to take care of everyone. So that was hard for me, but it was like such a blessing. And she did it while she was pregnant, you know what I mean? And still being able to bring home the majority of the money, and still being able to keep things together outside of just financially, but mentally and, spiritually as well. And so, yeah, I mean, the backbone of trusting in me to leave my job, to go to school, to start my own, as many people that doubted me saying, are you sure you can open up your own shop? Are you sure you're going to make money? Like imagine her, like she's directly impacted by whether or not the shop makes money. And, we're coming out of a period where we just spent all our money paying the tuition and all our money getting through this time. And then it's like, oh, you're going to go spend more money on putting the shop together? But the whole way just trusted me, even when I know she was nervous, and I know there were nights where she was like, man, I think he's crazy, but just still having that trust in me. And so having that, and then like we talked about, just knowing that you never have to worry about that part of your life. You know what I mean? Like you have to keep it together, and you have to always be working at it, but just knowing that at the end of the day, like you can put your sole focus when you walk in the shop into your business and into building for your family, because that side of your life is already tied up and taken care of. Like to me, that's huge. I couldn't imagine being a single guy right now with also trying to run this, because a part of your life would always be open-ended. You would always be wondering, okay, what's going to happen next in this area? Constantly a revolving door of meeting different girls or going on dates, you know what I mean, and stuff like that, and going out and looking for that satisfaction. And to know that area of your life is taken care of, to me, it's huge. I don't think I would be where I'm at if it wasn't for her.
Oh, I absolutely 100% agree with you. Yeah, I mean, I'm like we married very young, and then, within a year we were pregnant with our first baby, and then within a year of that we had another one, right?
Yeah.
And so, it was like a tidal wave, but like all along with that, we were building a business, right? And and it's really cool, because I think a benefit that is not spoken about marrying young, that I think it's overlooked a lot, is everything that happens after that marriage you've built together.
Yep.
And so she gets to feel the reward. She was there during the struggle. You know that she was there. You know that you both built this together. They were 100%. A key component in all of this. And then, I think a lot of times when people wait, what ends up happening is they have a life. They have the way they want to do things. They have the way they want to do things, and they just try to marry those things together. And it's like, I don't know if all these pieces fit. But with us, it's like, we had nothing. Yeah. Right. So it's a lot. It's easy to make two empty hands come together and hold hands. Right. Yep. It's harder whenever you're holding stuff.
Yeah. I remember having that conversation with my friend one time where it was like, he was like, dude, but I don't want to be tied down. Like I have all these goals. Like I want to travel here. I want to see this. I want to do that. And I was like, dude, I want to do all those things too, but I don't want to do them alone. Like I want to do them with somebody right next to me, experiencing it all through their eyes as well. You know what I mean? Like why not have someone right there through that entire journey? Like, yeah, you want to build your business and you want to go travel and you want to have fun and you want to do all these great things, but I mean, and obviously everybody has their own path, and it's not for everybody to get married young. No. You know, some people aren't going to find their one until they're 30 and 40, and it's worth the wait until then. Don't rush into something just because you're like, oh, I need to check off this box in my life. You know what I mean? Like, no, don't do that. Yes. But if, you know, and you'll know when the right person is, obviously, but like when that time comes, if you can do that young, to me, like it was like, dude, I want to experience this with somebody else. I don't want to spend the next 10 to 15 years of my life in experiencing these great highs without her. You know what I mean? And so when I knew it was her, it was like, if the only thing holding me back is that we're younger and people are going to be like, oh, you guys are young, you know what I mean? You should wait. To me, that's not a good enough reason to wait. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's stopping us? You know
it's
what I
just young because you're young, right?
Financially, we can handle it. You know what I mean? Families are good with it. You know what I mean? There's nothing actually stopping us besides the fact that people are, oh, you know, you should wait another year or two. Just make sure you're not, you know, live your life while you're single. Like, that's not a good enough reason. You know what I mean? Don't let being young hold you back. Because I do think that there's a lot of great things you can experience in growing together.
And then it's cool too. I mean, because like, you know, we've been very much blessed in the way of like we've been able to like work and travel, and you know, this is one of those freedom things in which you referenced before, to where we get to do things that other people may not. To where instead of having to travel for work, I get to bring them along, and then it's like a family trip that we get paid to do, which I love, and like I would not have it any other way. I will not go on another trip unless, you know, it's not something that they would enjoy by myself, because it's like now they get to experience the fruits of it, and then we're all experiencing it together, and it's like, you know, when you see those moments and you're like, all right, this was definitely worth it. And then, you know, the analogy being tied down, it you know, people see it as restrictive, but really, ultimately, if your relationship is tied down, it makes a lot of sense to tie stuff down if you're about to go into a storm. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like, you know, if you can tie down your relationship to this boat and you don't have to worry about it flying off, that's huge. And then, you know, and it's cool because like when you go into it together, you know, you've built it together and you both have ownership and you both feel as if you've really contributed what you both have, which is really awesome. So, so I do want to talk about, so what do the next steps look like for you? Kind of just moving forward with your shop at where it is now. And then you kind of, you know, you mentioned that you want to bridge that local barber and the chain, right? Find a nice middle ground there.
Definitely.
What can people expect to see in the kind of short term, you know, maybe a year to 2 years out?
Well, hopefully they can see us working together a lot more in the future. That's, you know, we're kind of trying to figure all that out. So that's number one, but just an uptick in everything across the board. You know, it's been a lot of, and I already touched on this earlier, but I didn't want to grow too fast, especially not knowing everything that I wanted to do. I'm very much the person where like I like to pursue a lot of things, and my mind's always going a million miles an hour with different ideas, but also there are certain things that I hold very close to, and I don't want to do them a disjustice, you know, and so I want to do them the right way. I'm very much someone that like, if I'm not good at something, I don't do much of it. You know what I mean? Sure. Like I like to do things that I'm good at and that I'm confident in. And so a lot of that with the shop was like, I have these big visions, these big dreams that I want to do, but I also don't want to do them the wrong way. You know what I mean? Like I have ideas of how I want to market the shop. I have ideas of how I want to build it, but I don't have the assets or I don't have the knowledge to do it the right way, so I don't want to sell it short. So we talk about doing a potential podcast, right? And that's something that's been on my heart for a long time that I've wanted to do, but it was never something I wanted to do halfway. I wanted to understand it before I just jumped in and did it. You know, I didn't want to put out a bad product because it was something that I hold tight. You know what I mean? I want it to be done. I want it to be done right. And I told you about, you know, right now we have a YouTube channel under the Barbers United Barbershop name. But right now it's a bunch of like fantasy football videos that we did. We did a fantasy football league through the shop. But to me, that was more lighthearted. That was more fun. And that was kind of my introduction into, okay, I'm going to make these videos and I'm going to put them out there, but it's going to be more for me to learn with. You know what I mean? This is going to be a time where I get to really see what's it like to shoot a video, what's it like to edit a video, what does the audio sound like, what's it like to have these Bluetooth mics, you know, stuff that I have no idea about. And I didn't want to just jump in with my podcast. I wanted that to be done right. And so with a lot of things with the shop coming up that I'm excited about is now having the time, the assets, the knowledge to do these things that I've wanted to do the whole time, but do them the right way. And so
you're kind of coming into the to have the ability to do those the way you wanted to in the first place.
Yes, exactly. So hopefully coming out soon, we will have a podcast where I'll be able to take some clients that I think that can inspire and make a difference in other people's life. Hopefully we'll have you on there.
Dude,
but have some clients and people that I've met along the way that I think that their stories are inspirational, and to do a podcast while getting a haircut. I figured, this is what I already do. I already sit here, do a haircut, and talk to people about their lives. Might as well just start a camera up and record it, And so that's kind of one of the first steps of things I like to do. But then ultimately with the shop, obviously we want to grow. I've got a spot currently. It's not a huge location, but it's been good for us. But it only holds about 5 or 6 chairs. And we're already at 3 chairs, and I have in talks with 2 or 3 people right now about potentially coming. So if we can get the marketing to the point where we can continue to bring in walk-ins and continue to grow to that level, I would love to bring those guys in. And so, as far as the future looks, I'm getting close to the end of my lease in the next year or so, and I would love to have a bigger location. I'd love to have a dream shop, one that can house 10 to 12 chairs. We talked about this. My goal is not to open up multiple locations that have 4, 5, or 6 chairs. My goal would be to have bigger shops that 10 to 12 where you can really start to turn a profit and really start to have those margins to where you can really, really grow and hopefully take a bite out of the apple of the industry. So that's the goal. And, it could be next year. It could be 5 years. I'm not really sure, but I'm excited.
But you're on the path.
Yes, we're on the path.
I think it's cool too. I mean, because we had mentioned, you want to grow in that way because it allows you to keep that same quality and that same vibe that you're trying to push out. And
yes,
I think that's
100%.
So important is that, you're what I really have enjoyed talking about you with your vision of the business is like you're very aware of what makes you special, and you don't want the growth to impede that,
100%.
Which I think is so cool. And so you've actually strategically thought that out.
Well, and that was a conversation I had with a couple of different people where it was like, oh, why aren't you doing more marketing? Why aren't you putting money into this? Why aren't you giving out coupons, things like that? And it was like, dude, if my ultimate goal is just to get people in the door, then yeah, sure, I should probably be doing that. But to me, if you can make it overnight, you can lose it overnight. And so for me, it was always like, I want to build this foundation of like, these are my clients and they're not going anywhere. You know what I mean? And I wanted it to be genuine. And even if it took a little bit longer, that was the foundation I wanted to build. And knowing that, the key to this is going to be me building relationships with these clients, not just offering a haircut, because there's a million people that can do that. And there's a million people that can cut better than me here in Knoxville. There's so many barbers. If you want me to recommend them, I could recommend them. You know what I mean? Yeah. But my goal is like, okay, I'm never probably going to be the best barber out there, nor do I want to be the best hair cutter, I should say, not barber, but the best hair cutter. But to me, being a barber is so much more than that. And it's the experience, it's the relationships that you build. And to me, that is something I think I can offer better than almost anybody. And so if we can build that experience in that environment that no one else can touch, to me, that's the number one thing. So it's like, no, I don't necessarily may not be the busiest right off the bat. And we may have some slow days, but it's like we're building this slowly and we're going to have a foundation that's not just going to be able to disappear overnight, And so that's the goal. Yeah.
That's awesome. I do want to ask, and this is something I'm going to try to start asking everybody that comes on, how much content do you consume, and like what kind of content do you consume, if you consume any?
I assume so much content.
You do?
So much. YouTube. YouTube is the number one thing for me.
Yeah,
and
me
so I have the YouTube Premium, which is amazing because I can. So most people are like, they ask me like, oh, if you do your podcast, or what are you going to do it on? I'm like, oh, I'm going to do it on YouTube. But I forget that most people don't have Premium. So like, in order for them to like actually listen, they're most of the time watching it, because I've gotten to the point where I turn my phone off. Like if you have Premium, I can start a video podcast that's like an hour and so long, close it, and just listen to my earphones, and I never even watch it. And but most people don't understand that because they have the regular YouTube where when you turn the phone off, it cuts off. You can't still do that. And so, but that's my main thing is I 100% on YouTube, and I try to do a lot more lighthearted things. I try to stay a little well-rounded because I have to. And I use this as an excuse to probably consume more content than I should. But, like, I have to keep up with it because my clients want to come in and talk sports. I have to know it. So, like, this is one thing that people have told me, too, is, like, man, like, you know so much about so much. You know what I mean? It's like golf. I never played golf at all before last year. But then all of a sudden, a lot of clients came in and they play golf and they talk golf. And so it was like, you know what? I'm going to learn golf.
Dude,
and so I started watching golf and I started playing golf. And now I love golf. But now it's like, dude, anyone that knew me a year or two ago was like, Jonas, you knew nothing about golf. But now I know all these names. I know all these different things. And it's like, I know who wins the tournaments. Like, I follow this now. Same way with baseball. I've never really cared. I've liked playing baseball as a kid, but I never really cared about baseball. Last year, during the World Series, that playoff time, people want to talk about it. I have clients that want to talk about it. Well, I need to know my stuff because that's my way to build that relationship with that client. You know, I may have a client that's a New York Mets fan. Well, so then I need to know what's happening in the offseason. So I'm keeping track of their free agency stuff just solely so when that client comes and sits down, I'm like, dude, what do you think about this signing? You know what I mean? And I don't even know this guy. I don't know nothing about this guy. Like, I don't know his career. I don't know who he actually is, how good he is, but I know just enough to keep that conversation going. So I like to consume mostly about sports and about kind of like daily topics in the world. I don't do too much like history and stuff like that. I like that stuff, but most of mine is more of like daily relevant topics because I do feel like I can use those. But yeah, I consume a lot of YouTube.
That's
I
awesome.
almost always have an AirPod in. Now I do have a pet peeve about like, I don't think, and everyone's different, but like sometimes barbers will have their AirPod in and listen to music or listen to a podcast, and I don't do that just because I feel like that takes away from what we talked about before, the experience. You know what I mean? I want to always feel like my clients can talk to me, so I try not to have an AirPod in my ear. But for the most part, if I'm not cutting hair, there's an AirPod in my ear and I'm listening to something. You know,
Dude,
sometimes my wife's just talking to me and I'm like trying to like, you know, just like so sneakily just tap that off real quick and like act like I'm listening, you know, because she knows like, okay, he's not listening to me.
Dude, it's so cool because I was actually just I had read How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yes. Audible too. My fault. I forgot. Shout out Audible. I do use legit. Audible too.
Yes. And so I was actually refreshing myself on that book. I try to do that like yearly on that book. It's a awesome book. And I was actually just refreshing on that part to where it's like how to essentially not necessarily, or it's like how to get people to enjoy your presence. And then he gives the example of like Theodore Roosevelt. Like everyone notoriously would leave the White House and be like, dude, this dude knows so much. He loves what I love. He's an awesome guy. And they're like, how do you know so much? He was like, I literally what he would do is he would just know who's coming in and he would research what they liked and 100%. Like read up on it. And that's exactly 100. What you're doing. And
exactly what I do.
And you know, and so it's like, it really is like a persuasion cheat code. And I found like you can do it. You don't even have to study up beforehand. If you can, that's great. But if you just ask the right questions and if you can listen to what they're saying and genuinely, now this is the trick. You do have to actually listen.
Yes.
Genuinely listen and then ask real intentional, like, questions that lead into the topic even more. You get the same effect without having to do the studying ahead of time. But
it's from the book, man. No one cares about you. That's what he hammers, right? They just want to talk about themselves. People care about themselves. You know what I mean? Just like I only care about myself, like the same way with those people, man. And so it's just like, and you have to, because so many times I find myself I'm cutting and they're talking, and I'm not really listening, like I'm got other things going on and I'm, oh, that's crazy, or oh man, that's wild, that's awesome, you know what I mean? When you say that and then like you can quickly tell like they realize like, okay, he's not listening at all, you know what I'm saying? So it has to be intentional. You have to really be genuinely listening. But it's just so important, man. Just, you know what, like whenever I find myself talking a lot, like someone asks me a question and I start talking for 5 or 10 minutes, I'm like, dude, they tuned out. Let me turn this back around.
Yes,
who do you think so win the Super Bowl? Jonas, Eagles, Chiefs. And I start breaking it down, what I believe, you know, and then I'm like, okay, who do you think is going to win? Like, let's talk about you now. Let's get your opinion, because that's what people care about the most. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, and that's what it is, just trying to branch myself out, consume as much knowledge as I can, just so that I can use it then to build those relationships with people. That's the number one thing for me. It
legit is a cheat code. Well, Jonas, I appreciate you coming on, man. This has been fun. I'm excited to do more stuff in the future. Where can everybody find you on socials and everything else?
Barbers United. Instagram, Barbers United Knox. YouTube, Barbers United Barbershop. That's where you find me.
Sweet.
Right there. Keep it simple.
You've given some great insight. You've given some, I have genuinely enjoyed our conversation. Dude, we're going to have to do it again. So I'm excited.
It's only our second conversation we've
ever had. Dude. And we're like digging deep.
Can
and
you believe
we keep on getting better and better conversations.
There we go.
You know what's happening is we're both doing the thing.
Yes, we are.
So we just bounce off each other. But yeah, so I appreciate you, man. And I'll see you all next time.